everyone, it's Mary Brownlee, licensed professional counselor. Today we're going to go over 5 parts that help trauma survivors basically get through trauma. Doesn't mean we don't get through trauma unscathed, but at least they help us survive. We're going to talk about the different jobs that these parts do, their greatest fear, in other words, what keeps them doing the exact job that they have been doing for all these years, and also we'll talk about the antidote, or ways to help the parts unlearn some of these old messages and old jobs that no longer serve you and can help you heal. I use IFS, and if any of you are unfamiliar with IFS, it's a wonderful approach that's really helpful for anybody who's gone through repeated incidents of relationship abuse, specifically in childhood is kind of my specialty, but you know, it definitely can help for anybody else who has developed a number of parts that cause distress. So in a nutshell, IFS teaches that we're all born with like an authentic self, and over time, due to relationship trauma that we get exposed to in childhood, our authentic self kind of has to shut down, and different parts are born to help us stay safe and survive. Now, these parts don't exactly act in the most adaptive ways, and we'll talk about that, but their intentions are good in the moment. You know, it's based on fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses, basically. So survival responses, stress responses. So we'll be going over these different parts. And if you find this helpful and you want me to continue going over additional parts and kind of the different jobs and roles that they play, and then some of the antidotes, let me know in the comments, and feel free to drop a like for this video as well. I'm only going to go over these 5 because I don't want it to get too overwhelming. But if this is actually helpful to you in helping to understand some of your own parts and your own trauma symptoms, let me know, because I'll be happy to continue to do more parts as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, the first part we're going to go over is hypervigilance. So very common for those of us with complex PTSD and other trauma-related disorders to have a high degree of hypervigilance. The environment was not safe while we were growing up. In fact, it's oftentimes very unstable, lots of emotional abuse, verbal abuse, physical violence, sexual violence, potentially. So essentially, that's going to instill in trauma survivors a high degree of hypervigilance, where you're kind of always on edge and never quite feel safe, right? It's like your head's on a swivel all the time for any potential, even small whiff of danger. So that's hypervigilance. So in the IFS lens of hypervigilance, is that this job and role that this part took on helped you stay safe. And as you can probably imagine, it was related to being on guard, you know, kind of like you are the castle and it's the guard standing out front, making sure that no potential invaders, for example, can come to your castle and storm it and potentially harm you. So its main job is, of course, to keep you safe. It's going to be constantly on guard. It's not going to let its guard down for 1 second, right? So this is like an exhausting level of energy that's required to be in a state of hypervigilance all the time, which a lot of trauma survivors are, because you never know when danger's around the corner, right? And it doesn't trust that self is you, your authentic self. And oftentimes if we're adults, it's the adult version of us, right? It doesn't trust that there is a wise adult present to protect it and keep it safe. So it really is like, this is my job. I don't trust anybody else to keep you as a person safe. And so thus I'm going to literally be on guard all the time for potential threats. Its greatest fear is that if it relaxes for 1 single second, that bad things can happen. So hypervigilance is really a difficult part to help it learn to trust that things will be okay, that it doesn't have to be at a level 10 threat detection all the time. You know, that there's a middle ground here. We're not saying for it to go down to 0, but it doesn't have to be a like level 10 all the time, because that is really, really exhausting. All right, let's talk about the antidote next. Antidote for hypervigilance is really restoring trust in self. So key component of IFS that we can't really touch upon here just because this is a video and I'm not actually in front of you and you're not actually my client. But if you and I were doing an IF session together, this would be a very fluid, flexible thing that we would be kind of doing in the moment and working with whatever unique information your system is bringing forth. But at least I want to give you a general idea from what I've observed over the years of what hypervigilance typically needs to calm down. All right. So this is kind of, we're going to speak a little bit in generalities, but everybody's system is unique. And so these answers can always vary too, based on your unique system. But hopefully you'll find this helpful. So the antidote for hypervigilance is restoring trust in self. And self, again, is you. It's your authentic self. The 8 C's of self is an IFS concept. And basically the 8 C's, if you don't know, are things like calmness, feeling centered, feeling connected, having courage, having clarity, like you can see things accurately without strong black and white thinking and those kind of polarized all or nothing thought patterns, compassion, curiosity. So these give you an idea of what self energy feels like. And you'll know when you're in self because you'll have an absence of very strong emotions. Those are not going to be present. You're going to feel calm and centered, very open, curiosity, relaxed. It's you at your best when you're not under stress. So you can think of self energy like that. It's your wise mind energy and you when you're not under, some sort of horrific stress where you have to be on guard and one of the protectors has to kind of be on board to help you. So in IFS, essentially, we are creating relationships between self and part. And before we do any work, there is usually no relationship between authentic self and these wounded parts that have taken over and are doing jobs and roles. There really is none. So the idea is that you begin to build relationships between part and self so that parts will allow they'll allow self to lead, essentially. So the analogy I like to give is pretend you go into a classroom, a kindergarten classroom. A lot of these parts are really young. And there's no teacher present. Can you imagine if there was no teacher present in a kindergarten classroom? It would be an absolute shit show, right? You would have like kids over here throwing things, somebody over here spitballing this kid's over here getting her hair pulled, it'd be like an absolute, just nightmare. So the idea is that when authentic self, that wise mind energy is on board, the system calms down because there is a compassionate, courageous, calm, beautiful mentor leader present that can calm all the kids down and be like, little Jimmy, you sit down. Maria, please take a seat and stop pulling Amy's hair, So there's somebody present that can really reduce the chaos in the system. So all of these parts, whether it's hypervigilance or any of the other parts, you need to make sure that you're building a trusting relationship between part and self. And that does take time. So that's kind of an organic process. But overall, the antidote here is to restore trust in wise self, which allows the part to relax. It realizes there's a competent leader on board. Letting self, basically take care of you so that it can step back. So one thing we find out with a lot of these IFS parts, these wounded parts, they're exhausted. They've been doing the jobs and roles that they've been doing for years, trying to keep you safe, and they are quite frankly exhausted. And so when you restore trust and self-leadership, a lot of times the parts will step back and you will feel a lot less distress and a lot less tension and more openness in your system. The energy will shift and you won't feel that sense of exhaustion. And it's important to note that we're not trying to get rid of any part. All right. So a lot of parts, if they think that you're trying to get rid of them, oh, no, they're not going to work with you. We're not trying to get rid of them. We're trying to give them a different job and role that's not so exhausting and that actually is more authentic to who they really were. Right. So if you had been a kiddo in your childhood home and there was no chaos or trauma or abuse, who would you have been without chaos, trauma, and abuse, right? That's what we're trying to get back to. And all of these parts got recruited at some point in your life to help you stay safe, but that's not authentically who they are. You were not meant to be like a hypervigilant person. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. We're not trying to get rid of any of these parts. We're trying to have them take on new ways of being. And so maybe your hypervigilant part, perhaps that was the part of you that loved to explore and climb trees and was really curious and creative as a child. Great. Go back to being able to play and explore and do activities that really bring purpose and meaning into your life. So that's kind of the idea. It doesn't have to be hypervigilant anymore. Maybe it can go really explore the outdoors now and really enjoy it. So that's kind of the idea. I hope that makes sense. Feel free to ask any questions if any of this sparks any questions that you might have. All right. And I love the idea of giving it a different job or role as well. Like instead of maybe being super controlling, could it just be a helper, for example? So it doesn't have to like micromanage and control everything. It can work collaboratively with self. And a lot of times parts like that idea, like, oh, you're actually allowing me to still be somewhat in control. I don't have to be the, the full teacher, so to speak, but maybe we can be like co-leaders and we can be flexible together. And if I say, no, I'm not comfortable with that, self respects that and says, of course, and cares about me and my feelings. So yeah, a helper instead of a controller, a lot of times parts like that as well. All right, let's go to the next part. All right, depression is another one I commonly see associated with trauma. People with complex PTSD very commonly have comorbid diagnoses, and that simply means they have multiple diagnoses. Oftentimes, I will see anxiety and depression very commonly with CPTSD. Panic attacks are very common with CPTSD. Dissociative identity disorder, borderline personality disorder. So a lot of these diagnoses, you'll see them come in together. And of course, trauma is the undercurrent of all of them. So even though we might be working on depression, the undercurrent is that the trauma created the depression in the first place. So sometimes it's like chicken or egg, what came first. But if you have a ton of childhood trauma, it's very likely that any diagnosable mental health disorders are actually related to the trauma that you went through, and not just like say just a simple diagnosis of depression. People can have that too, especially if you have genetic history, for example, of depression running in your family tree. All right. So the job of depression is to help you stay safe by shutting emotions down. Depression helps you to not feel. Makes total sense. It helps you stay numb. It protects you from overwhelming feelings. And it keeps you safe by reducing hope. For example, if you get your hope up, right, bad things will happen again. So depression very much is like, let's keep our feelings numb and to keep our expectations at rock bottom, just completely bottom it out so that I don't ever feel hope again, because I have felt hope in the past and then I was completely crushed. And I almost wanted to die. It was so painful, for example. So depression comes in and is like, hey, I got you. I know how to fix this. I'll help you not feel. I'll help you keep your hopes minimized. That way you stay safe. If you just expect absolutely nothing and you're numb, we can survive. May not be fun, but at least we're surviving, right? So that's kind of the job and role that the part takes on. Its greatest fear is that if this part lets the feelings in, you will be overwhelmed and completely not be able to function. So common. Once my clients start to feel the feelings, oftentimes progress will stop temporarily because they're terrified of being overwhelmed. So a good IFS therapist know this. And so we try to work very, very slowly and comfortably with the client's system, very collaboratively with the client's system, so that the system gets to trust us and know that we're not going to just open the floodgates and they're going to be left with, defenseless without being able to manage distressing emotions. So oftentimes it's like, if you get the part to understand, we're just going to work in baby steps. And if it gets overwhelming, we can stop at any time. But you need to be able to feel the feelings to get better. Yeah, we were meant to feel the feelings, because feelings are like beautiful ocean waves. They have a crest at the top, but then if you let them, they go away. And so oftentimes what trauma survivors have done is stuffed feelings and numbed and all of that and avoided feelings. And those feelings didn't go anywhere. They stayed at that peak, and then the part came in and rescued and numbed. But that emotion didn't really have anywhere to go, and it didn't get processed. So it's very important for pain and distress and trauma to get processed in a healthy, safe way so that our system can let go of it, and you're done. You're done. It's not in the system anymore. So we have to let depression know that we'll just do it in very small increments that are manageable. And then usually it will trust us and let us work with it and feel the feelings in a small, safe, incremental way. Another greatest fear is that if you start living again, you'll be crushed by more disappointment. Yeah, so that's along the lines of what I said about hope, right? That if you start to have purpose and meaning and maybe getting back into life and something that really fills you with joy, that what if that's taken away from you? How many other bad things have happened to me? How many other times has XYZ been taken from me? And so oftentimes depression is, it demotivates people and they feel tired and they just kind of lay around all day. Well, there's also a protective function to that. At least I'm I'm not going out, getting my hopes up again, participating in life only to be crushed again, and want to die. So yeah, hopefully some of that makes sense. We'll talk about the antidote now. The antidote to depression is, again, restoring trust in self. You want that wise teacher, that wise captain, that wise mentor, fully in charge of the little, school bus or the ship that contains all your little parts. If we don't have a captain on board or a school teacher to drive the school bus, bad things happen. So the whole goal of IFS is restoring self-leadership. You're going to see this commonly that I'll say it repeatedly because that really is the goal of IFS. If you don't have that beautiful, wise mind, authentic self-energy on board, parts are going to lead. They're going to take over. They're going to sweep you. They're going to lead. But if they know that a beautiful, wise, mature adult is at the helm, they will step back and feel safe and let you lead. All right. Also, restoring trust in self also restores hope, right? So self knows that disappointment happens in life, but it doesn't have to crush us. So self is able to withstand disappointment in a way that the part cannot. So it also allows us to feel hope and to trust that we can handle, if life hurts us again. If depression trusts self to take care of it, it will feel less distress. So yeah, again, another big goal of IFS is we're reducing distress by helping these parts learn to trust again and to feel safe again. We're helping the part learn that it can tolerate bad things happening and that you are stronger than it believes you are. So a lot of these parts don't recognize how resilient and strong and amazing trauma survivors are. And so you're oftentimes showing them, this is me now. This was me when I was little. Look how much I've grown. Look how much I'm capable of. And you're restoring some of that ability for that part to recognize, there is a leader on board and I can step back. You can help it learn flexibility. It's able to roll with the punches and bounce back after life stressors. We just kind of talked about that. Distress tolerance, you can show the part that it can handle tough emotions little bit by little bit so that it doesn't overwhelm. I talked about that as well. So yeah, these are some of the antidotes to help the depressed part reduce distress, trust self-leadership, and step back. And in a nutshell, reduce depression so that you're not depressed anymore. All right, next part. Substance abuse. This is very, very common. So right off the bat, I want to take all the shame out of anybody who has struggled with addiction or substance use. Nobody grows up wanting to be an addict, for goodness sake. I have treated many clients successfully over the years, and it is always trauma-based. Always, always, always. I've never had somebody yet that started an addiction without significant childhood trauma. Now, there may be some of you out there where it just happened to wrong place, wrong time, etc. You got exposed to a substance, got addicted. But at least from what I've seen, 9 years in the field now, every person with a severe addiction has horrific childhood abuse and trauma. So this is a part. And again, the job for substance using parts is to numb the feelings, right? When you were a kiddo, you were helpless, you were defenseless. And if you were faced with overwhelming feelings and there was no safe person of which to process those feelings with and to feel them in a safe way so that they could go away, what happened is your system naturally learned, well, if I take XYZ, my system feels a lot better. Now, granted, it's temporary. Right? Every addict knows this. It's temporary. You might feel better temporarily, but every addiction is a road to nowhere because it's not actually healing the distress. It's just numbing it temporarily. The distress is still in there. So yeah, it helps you to escape a painful reality. That's very common with a lot of my traumatized clients. They've had such horrific abuse experiences that not only are they numb, but they're not present. You get to just kind of escape out of your own life. You're not present, and it feels safer to just be zoned out and numbed out and high all day. At least you get through each day. And definitely I've seen this commonly. It's a way to kind of be passively suicidal. So if you're not actually going to do the deed, substance use can be a slow way to kill yourself. So that is a common one I see too. So that's the job of the substance using part, is not only to numb and escape, but if worst case scenario comes, I can kill you too. Yeah, so this is a dangerous part. This is what we call firefighter part. Firefighter parts are they can cause more overt distress that you see on the surface and can be more dangerous. But firefighter parts are really those that rush in to rescue when pain is at a very, very high level. Other parts, like hypervigilance, for example, are more manager parts. So they kind of manage you day to day. But firefighter parts are ones that are just all about numbing the emotions in as fast as possible. So they're the distress taker carers, taker care ofs, So yeah, substance use is a big firefighter. Suicide is a firefighter too. I can always talk about that in another video as well, since that one's not in this one. The greatest fear of substance abuse is that if you take away the substance, you'll have to feel the feelings again and you will not be able to cope. This terrifies my clients who are addicts. So if you take away the only thing that has successfully helped me survive day to day, how the hell am I supposed to survive in the future if I have to feel the stuff that I have not felt in years and years and years and successfully able to numb? So again, it goes back to you have to get this part's buy-in that feeling the feelings in a tolerable and small gradual way is important for their healing, that they cannot sidestep this. That if they want to learn distress tolerance and emotional regulation, which all of us should have by the time we're adults, but you don't get it if you're a trauma survivor, right? Our shit show families, for example, didn't do a great job at teaching us distress tolerance or emotion regulation, for goodness sake. So this is an important part of taking back kind of what should have been actually installed, the software, so to speak. If we were human beings growing up in healthy families, this software would get installed, but we didn't have that luck. So distress tolerance and emotion regulation is something that trauma survivors definitely lack, and trauma therapists, good ones at least, help clients learn how to do. So our job is to teach the substance using part that it can tolerate emotions and that we'll do it in again, baby steps so that it doesn't overwhelm, and having encouragement and trust that it can do this. And we believe in it. We believe in it. We know that this part can do this. And again, another fear of substance use is that you will not have any way out of the painful reality of your life. So yeah, the idea here is as you're restoring hope in trauma survivors, that hopefully their reality shifts over time. They may come in with one set of reality that's very painful and very hard to cope with, but over time, as we are beginning to shift the reality into something new, something more positive, something hopeful, again, substance use tends to step back a little bit. Let's talk about the antidote next. The antidote for substance use is to help the part feel the feelings in a safe way. Again, I mentioned baby steps so that it doesn't overwhelm. We want to appreciate the part's job in keeping you safe when you were too young or helpless to do anything else. So this is something IFS does that I absolutely love, is we express appreciation to the part for its hard work. Because really the part has been working very hard to keep us safe, and expressing appreciation is a wonderful way for, again, building trust between self and part, and teaching part that we don't see it as the enemy. We have compassion for it, we are interested in its story, and we want to alleviate its suffering. So we're not the enemy, and we do express appreciation. So yeah, this really goes a long way towards helping parts heal a lot faster as well. We want to be a loving and kind parent to the part so that it reduces its shame and distress. So that's another reason why we are reflecting back some of those positive things that we see in the trauma survivor as well, because a good, loving, kind parent would be doing that. But of course, if you're a trauma survivor, yours probably didn't. And we want to give the part new strategies to cope that are not harmful. So if we're taking away the substance, okay, we got to bring something back in that allows it to cope in a healthy way from now on. So if emotional distress happens in the future, which of course it will, life is life, what are some new, more positive ways that they can handle the stressor? So that's important too, to reassure the substance using part that the client will be able to cope with a difficult emotions in the future, and to give alternate strategies as well for the part to be able to cope with distressing emotions. So yeah, I hope that was helpful for this one as well. Another super common part I see is the criticizer. All right, so this is our inner bully. Oftentimes, our parents' internalized voice is responsible for the criticizer. The criticizer's job is basically to keep you in line so that bad things don't happen. This part really fears that, especially if your childhood was full of a raging, screaming, punitive parent, definitely as a kid, none of us wanted to be screamed and raged at and punished. So oftentimes a lot of us develop a very strong criticizer that's like, if you just stay in line and behave yourself, nothing bad will happen. So that's kind of the idea. That's how this part's born. It tries to keep you small so that you don't believe in yourself either. So again, interesting. It prevents disappointment, right? So if you continue in life having very small expectations for yourself, then at least in some sideways way, it protects you from disappointment. So it's interesting how a lot of these parts, when you start working with them, it may not be apparent in the beginning, but later on you begin to see how genius some of the ways that they acted to help keep you safe in the only way that they knew how. It's pretty ingenious, some of the ways that these parts work. The greatest fear is that if you don't stay in line and stay small, bad things are going to happen. So yeah, again, it's wants you to be as small and don't believe in yourself and be as invisible as possible, for example, so that bad things won't happen to you. Another thing that I've seen is that if you are too soft, the world will destroy you. So sometimes the criticizer also wants you to be tough, toughen up, because the world is harsh and the world is dangerous and you need to be tough. So that's kind of another thing that I've seen with this part. Let's talk about the antidote. All right, the antidote for the criticizer part is to show the criticizer that it's possible to love yourself and stay safe at the same time. This is oftentimes something the criticizer has no idea, that it's possible to love yourself and be safe, and that you don't need to be mean to yourself to achieve that. It's like, light bulb moment. To restore trust, again, in that wise, beautiful, authentic self energy, and letting self lead the system instead of the critical parent. So just as I mentioned, the criticizer is oftentimes that internalized critical parent. And beautiful, authentic self is devoid of like shame and criticism and nasty, mean type of comments. A self doesn't lead like that. Self is a healthy mentor, a healthy teacher, a healthy parent figure that's unconditionally loving and nurturing and gentle. So it's amazing how I've worked with people with criticizer parts where I ask the criticizer part, are you aware that you're harming the client? And it's amazing because the part didn't know that it was actually causing the client immense emotional pain. And when it did, it was a big wake-up call for the part, and then shame rushed in. And it was not, it was something that I had to work to tell the part, like, no, we don't want to go to shame and self-hatred, because you didn't know any better. You were just doing what you thought was best and what would help. So again, lots of beautiful relationship building with these parts to deeply understand them, which reduces their distress. It reduces shame in the system, and again, allows for that self-leadership. We want to demonstrate to the part that you don't need to be perfect to have value, and that it's okay to make mistakes. Yeah. So that's how we learn, right? Mistakes is how all of us learn. None of us are perfect. So oftentimes we're beginning to, what we're trying to do is show the criticizer there's a new way of being. You don't got to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. In fact, mistakes help us learn. And you're showing it that there's an entirely new way of existing in the world that doesn't require massive amounts of emotional pain and self-hatred. We want to give the criticizer a new job as protector and advocate instead of bully, which can help protect the vulnerable parts with good boundaries and assertiveness instead. So yeah, I've done this before with a number of clients with criticizer parts of like, hey, what if instead of kind of being the bully, you could be kind of like the big brother and you get to protect these vulnerable younger parts? They like that. So the criticizer part likes to have a new job or role that doesn't require harming the client or harming these younger parts that might be present. So yeah, they like that idea. So sometimes we give the part a new job or role that's actually helpful and kind and not going to be damaging to the client system. All right, the last one is people pleasing. Oh my goodness, I see this one all the time as well. Kind of this one and the criticizer is two of the top parts I see in trauma survivors, followed by substance use, hypervigilance. Oh yeah, these are some of the common ones. All right, so the people pleaser one keeps you safe by centering on everyone else's needs before your own needs, right? So in our unhealthy abusive families, what happened was a lot of the times there are role reversals where the parent is expecting the child to meet the parent's needs. Totally inappropriate, not at all normal. And so children get very used to like walking on eggshells around an abusive parent, anticipating what the parent needs, anticipating the parent's moods, and like doing everything they can to keep the parent happy, to avoid being abused, obviously. So this people-pleasing part definitely develops very, very early for a lot of trauma clients, and it continues into adulthood and can really cause excessive, doormat, where you have absolutely no boundaries, no assertiveness. People walk all over you. You can't protect yourself from abusers. So this one kind of has a lot of negative fallout. But its intention initially was to try to help, right? Like if you are just kind of quiet and keep everyone happy, and no one will abuse you, So the intention was good. It was trying to keep you safe. But as we see, a lot of the times, the actual fallout from some of these protective behaviors is, bad things are actually happening to us. And there's definitely new and more adaptive ways of dealing with these behaviors as well. All right, oftentimes the people pleaser part is a fawn response. So I've talked about in some of my other videos, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn. So fawn is the fourth response. That's the people pleasing response that develops out of, again, chronic abuse in childhood. That very much, I give in, please don't hurt me, like you're fawning. So yeah, fawn is the fourth stress response. And again, you're keeping the abuser happy by having no needs, people pleasing, you're not talking about your own needs, thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. Oh, no. We all know in our abusive families, those were not tolerated. So we got to keep the focus on the abuser. Oftentimes, people pleasers are codependent. That's a word that's been bandied about a lot in the psychological field, but really codependent is just the people pleasing part. It's like I learned to have no needs, and that's how I survived, and to keep abusers happy or people in power happy. Literally, that's how I survived. So that's what it's about. Codependence is literally about that. So the greatest fear of this part is that if you stop people pleasing, no one will love you, or you will be punished somehow, either by like abandonment, being yelled at, being criticized, shamed, abused. So yeah, this is the fear of the people pleaser part, that if I start saying no and having good boundaries or using assertive communication, terrible things are going to happen, right? So this can really stop people from making forward progress with this part. This is a difficult part, and learning assertiveness and boundary and recognizing you have basic human rights. That is a crucial process for trauma survivors to heal from childhood abuse and neglect. All right, let's talk about the antidote. The antidote for the people-pleasing part is to teach the part that it has value no matter how other people treat it. So a lot of us who grew up in unhealthy families equated our worth and value with how we were being treated by our family members or other people. And so if we were being abused, we equated that to there was something inherently wrong with us. So this is something that has to be corrected in trauma therapy. You have value. From the moment you took your first breath in this world, you had value. And it doesn't matter how people treated you. You had value irregardless. And so this is definitely a truth that we work to kind of restore the person's sense of value in themselves. The trauma victim, for example, definitely struggles in this area. So this is a big one to restore and correct. We teach the part that it's okay to have separate needs and feelings and perceptions that are different from other people in the family. Again, this is not something we were taught in abusive families. We were oftentimes taught that our thoughts, needs, feelings, perceptions, etc. didn't matter or were wrong, and our family members would get mad or abuse us if we tried to assert any sort of thought or feeling or opinion that was different from the rest of the individuals in the family. So again, we're correcting a lot of those old messages that no longer serve us. We have wise self, protect the part, and unconditionally love the part. So again, we're restoring that beautiful self-leadership. And again, self has the ability to unconditionally love these parts like a healthy parent would. and that teach the part that it doesn't need to be perfect to be loved. Yeah, the goal of our human life is not to be perfect. We make mistakes, life is messy, we learn, but really the goal of life is to be love and to show love in all the different forms that takes, including loving ourselves and loving ourselves deeply, because all of us have value and worth. And again, teaching the client that it's okay to put themselves first. It's okay to put their needs first. It's okay to, put at least yourself a little bit higher than other people around you. We're not talking about like going full to the dark side of complete self-absorption, but it's okay to put yourself just a smidge above other people's needs and feelings, etc. That doesn't make you a terrible person, right? So we're kind of correcting the imbalance, because Lord knows before the person would put their needs, feelings, thoughts, etc., dead last. So you don't got to do that anymore to stay safe or to survive. So yeah, I hope that was helpful in talking about correcting some of the people-pleasing misperceptions and negative learning messages that this part got. Okay, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, again, please leave a comment, please like. If you want more parts kind of broken down like this, feel free to let me know. I would definitely be happy to continue with some of the different parts and breaking them down like this. It's really helpful for clients to understand some of the different jobs and roles that their trauma symptoms have taken over the years, and why the trauma symptoms manifest the way they do. And parts, really, I love parts because it takes the shame out of it, right? It's easier to understand, oh, this is my people-pleasing part acting up again, or there goes my criticizer part acting up again, right? It's like, it's not all of you. That's what's what I love so much about IFS. It's not all of you that's this one way. In fact, all of us have probably many different shades and parts to us, and what makes us who we are. So that's what I love so much about IFS. Makes it a very kind of approachable way to conceptualize ourselves and conceptualize healing, and it totally reduces shame, which is really important for trauma survivors. So again, hope you found this helpful. I appreciate all of you. Subscribe if you would like more videos like this, and feel free to drop any comments or questions below. And you guys all take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye, everybody.